Good morning, everyone. We might get underway. Thanks for joining us today for our Industry Day briefing on the Multipurpose Stadium. Just to flag, we are streaming online. We have quite a few people watching this remotely, and we are recording, so just an FYI on that one. A couple of things just to flag. You should have on your seats a little pamphlet that has a URL on it, and people who are online will hopefully have been sent the link. Please reach out if any issues, and the URL will pop up a couple of times on the screen. This is just in case you have any questions as we're going through this today. There will be a bit of info, and we'll try and interrupt speakers as we see questions pop up and ask questions as we go. So a bit of what we're going to run through today, we'll give you some very brief context and then on the stadium, a bit of an overview, and then we'll get into the main event, which is talking through some of the work trade packages and providing some context around the scale and volume of those different packages of works. We will, before we wrap up, also have a bit of a chat about stadium operations, just for a bit of context as the last bit of the session there. Very important, we do have our probity advisors here with us today. We're in an active procurement process for the delivery of the stadium. So obviously any information we provide here is general in nature, but our intent is to give you a feel for the development and the different elements that will be included in that. They're to watch us, not you, so don't worry. So just a little bit about us. We're a statutory corporation, which means we're attached to government and linked to government, but we do have our own independent board. Macquarie Point Development Corporation was established in 2012, and the majority of the work we've been focusing on over that period is remediating the site. So working through an understanding of each of the different activities, testing, managing and removing some of the previous industrial impacts that happen on the site. In terms of the stadium, our job is to design and deliver, and Stadiums Tasmania will lead the actual operations of that site, which we'll talk about a bit later. In terms of our team, you will see quite a few of those, or some of those today, and we're a combination of staff, so the team that are employed by Mac Point, and a number of specialist consultants that are really important in how we go through the delivery and design stage. Just a quick bit of context about our site. So I imagine a lot of you are familiar with it. It's only just diagonally over the road from us here. It's a 9.3 hectare site. And I like this image because it just gives a bit of context. There's a lot of chat about remediation and it being a reclaimed site, which is true. But it does also include some original land. So when you look at this image, the sort of sand colour to the left is real land, as I would refer to it, and you can see the original shoreline that runs through the western side of the site on the left there. In the sort of mid-1800s, you can see it was progressively reclaimed, and that was to support the industrial activities at the time and come out to the natural deep water bay. So on the left of that image to the west of the site is the port. So our site was originally home to the Muwanina people, and you can see there's a little blue line there that was the original pathway for what's now known as the Hobart Rivulet, which currently tracks under the city and comes out towards Regatta Point. So it would have been where saltwater and freshwater met, with shallow mud flaps and a really important site. So while we need to manage that industrial activity that happened afterwards, it's important to have that context. Some of the activities that happened on site were largely industrial. So it was used as a cold store, goods storage, military, lumberyard, as a gasworks, which was some of our more challenging remediation we've just completed. But most people's recent memory will be of it as the Hobart Rail Yard. So the last train actually left our site in June 2014, so not that long ago, and we've been working to remediate the site since then. That history is important for how we remediate and prepare the site for development, but it's also important for how we're subsequently developing the site. So this image shows the goods shed, which you can see from Evans Street. It looks relatively small from the street side, but when you get on sideways, you can see it's a pretty long building. It's just over 100 metres long. So the goods shed is a heritage listed shed that's part of our site. It was used to load goods, as the name says, on trains as they came in. So the side panels would open up and goods would be loaded in. We will be picking up and relocating that shed as part of the development of the site, which we'll talk about a bit later during today. But this just shows a bit of context. You can see the roundhouse that used to be on the sort of mid to western, I was going to say eastern, side of the site. So that's the Tasman Highway running along the top, which is in a similar location to where the stadium will be developed. And then to the north, so closest to me, there was a train maintenance shed, and that is a similar location to where we'll rebase the goods shed, and that alignment with the rail is really important for that context. So the stadium is obviously a critical part of our site, but it is only one part. So we do have a precinct plan that we developed before we went into the design process for the stadium to help guide all the different elements we wanted to capture on site. And this just shows the precinct plan, which was approved in 2024, and the key elements. So particularly on the eastern side, a really important part of activating the whole site will be the eastern commercial zone there and the builds that will follow after the stadium. And we will have a residential development in the red to the north. The western side, which is closest to the city, will be an open parkland space to help that move into the site. The stadium itself has a lot of individual activation points that will help people interact with it every day, not just for major events, but also for some of those smaller events and using a lot of the function spaces and bars and restaurants that will be integrated into the building. But we will also have development that follows after that. The stadium is stage 1 though, and we'll be doing that first. We obviously need all that space for laydown and for supporting development. I don't want to scare anyone here about our lovely order we need to comply with, but you may have noticed there was a little bit of debate last year, and the project has subsequently been approved by the Parliament. That's planning approval, so that gives us the ability to move forward. The stadium order is pretty extensive. It's 157 pages and has around 142 conditions, but that's majority our job. So we'll be providing guidance on how we need to meet those different conditions and be supporting through that process. And one of the ways we're doing that is through a staging plan. So we've developed a staging plan that maps every single condition to different stages of the development, and that's currently going through an approval process, and then we'll release that so we can talk about it a bit more, but Sam will touch on that in a minute. There's 4 key stages that inform our grouping. So the first 2 stages are pretty relevant right now. There are site preparation and bulk earthworks that we'll talk about, the pack down of the goods shed and removal of the red shed, which is in the south east corner. Stage 3 is the main game, so that's the construction of the stadium, including the landscaping spaces around it, and then obviously the operational stage. So there are a number of conditions that relate to operations, not just construction. So at this point, I might hand over to Sam Wilson-Hafnen, who is our project director.
Thanks, Anne. So as Anne mentioned, I'm going to come in and talk a little bit about procurement. So I'll talk a little bit about the procurement in terms of the separate packages that we'll be going out to market with, and then probably importantly the main show, the main procurement of the stadium. So in terms of the separate packages, we've got them listed up there, and I'll get into a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides, but we've got the test rig, some site preparation and bulk earthworks, the disassembly and reassembly of the goods shed, demolition of the red shed, some power upgrades on site, water augmentation, stormwater upgrades, sewer realignment, and then also the Northern Access Road, which isn't actually a project being delivered by Macquarie Point, it's a project being delivered by Department of State Growth. But there are a series of separate packages of work that will be coming out to the market. And then we've got the main stadium procurement scope, which is essentially the construction of the multi-purpose stadium, all of the landscaping and the surrounds, the practice wickets, the fit out of the goods shed, and some supporting site infrastructure. So first of all, the test rig, which has been, I've got to say, one of the funnest projects I've probably been involved in recent memory. So why are we building a test rig? So we're doing something fairly innovative and new, a first of its kind in the world, which is to build a stadium that will be certified for international cricket, and whilst also having a full roof. And there isn't a stadium in the world that can claim that it has that currently, and we're hoping that we can once we finish construction. You can't get certification until it's actually complete. So the roof itself has to perform a number of functions. So obviously the primary function of the roof is to protect you from the weather, so you've got to stop the rain and the wind. But then importantly, because it's a stadium that has natural turf, you also need to make sure it's letting light through so you can grow grass. And then it provides a number of secondary functions as well in terms of supporting lights and things like that. But with that, the roof structure, and we'll get into it in a little bit more detail when you get the engineers up here and we're talking about trade packages, but the roof structure is essentially a steel and timber lattice structure that goes across the stadium with a clear, very fancy plastic called ETFE, a bit like a Teflon, as a pillow structure. But because of the regular nature of that steel supporting structure, there's the possibility that we're going to cast shadows onto the field of play. Now, all stadiums cast some form of shadow. You've got light towers and stands and things like that, so at certain times of the day you will get a shadow coming across. But because of our structure, again, you'll see that later, we can potentially get quite a regular pattern of shadows across the whole period of the day. So working with our stakeholders, AFL, cricket, and the broadcast companies, we've been looking at, well, what's the solution to that? How do we mitigate that and manage it and make sure we get the protection that a roof provides, but also don't impact play? One of the primary concerns that cricket had raised that we needed to work through was, will this regular shadow, a straight shadow line down the pitch, cause an impact to a batsman being able to see a ball? So when the ball's coming at 200 kilometres an hour and it darts in and out of a shadow, is that an issue? And because you're going to get a shadow all the time or fairly regularly, is it a bigger issue than another ground? So that was sort of the discussion that we were having with users. And as a result of that, we've been exploring different material options that can somewhat mitigate those shadows. So where we landed was to develop a test rig. So we wanted to develop a rig down on site, which if anyone's come near Mac Point recently, you can actually see it under construction, to effectively test that, to test the impact of shadows on batsmen playing cricket. And so we've got a cricket pitch, or we will have a cricket pitch, and we will have nets, and we'll be bowling balls and simulating play under effectively a simulation of our stadium roof. And so the pillow sizes and things are the same, albeit it's a fair bit closer to the ground, this structure. One of the things as we've been iterating through this process is we've been looking at different materials, and we've actually looked at using a matte ETFE. So instead of a perfectly clear ETFE, we're looking at a translucent ETFE that still lets light through, enough light to grow grass, and we'll hear again a little bit about the turf system later on, but acts to effectively naturally diffuse the light, so it casts a fairly uniform shadow across the whole field of play. And so that's been part of what we've been working on and we're looking to test. So as I said, this package has already been let. So Black Cap are the head contractor, and there's a series of local Tasmanian contractors working hand in hand with Black Cap. And then we've got Fabrictecture, our sort of fabric roof specialist that's been provided and installed the ETFE. So it was a pretty quick process, and one of the reasons I think it was such a fun project was we had the order approved in December. This project falls underneath that. We ordered the material in December, the design was finalised in December, fabrication commenced in January, and we're looking at doing testing in March. So it's been a really compressed time frame and a really enjoyable one to be part of as a result. And I just want a special shout out to the Tassie contractors that have helped us here. It's been a really collaborative process, and Fabrictecture, who installs these structures all around the world, made the comment when they were installing the ETFE on the Hayward steel frame was that it's the best they've ever seen in terms of accuracy and tolerance. So we really can do great things in Tasmania. The next package is bulk earthworks. So this has been tendered and yet to be awarded. And this is the first stage of actual getting into the construction of the stadium. So the bulk earthworks sees us removing up to about 100,000 cubes of material off-site, largely level 2 contaminated material, so low-level contamination, and taking that to disposal. And it's taking it down to an RL of about 2.4, which for anyone that's walked around the site, if you're walking along Evans Street, that's about 2.4. So it's taking the whole area down to that. We're doing this as a bit of a precursor to the main contract, so it de-risks it for the main contractor. It'll likely go to a Tasmanian contractor due to its scale, and it lets us get ahead of the program. So it's about a 12-month program, and we'll talk about the procurement of the main stadium and how this flows into that soon. But as I said, yeah, works have been tendered. We're expecting a contract to be let by the end of March, and we'll be commencing sometime in Q2. This again falls under the order, so we've got to work through the planning conditions and make sure they're all satisfied before we start work. The next one is the good shed, red shed removal, dismantle, relocation, which Anne alluded to previously. So this is the relocation of the goods shed, the heritage listed goods shed. So we've got to take that building down, pull it down piece by piece, go and store it off-site, and then we'll reassemble key components of that to maintain anything that's got a heritage significance and relocate it. So you can see here in the picture it's going from its current location, which is down on Evans Street, and being relocated up to the north of the state. And it forms a key part of the stadium, and I think one that I know the operators are really excited about using both on game day and non-game day. And the red shed goes down, and we'll look at opportunities to reuse some of the material from that in some of the feature bars and things that Amy will talk about a bit later on. So again, this package has been this package has been tendered. We're currently working through the assessment process. Again, plan to award the contract around the end of March and commencing in Q2 2026. Again, working through the planning process, we'll have to satisfy a range of conditions. But by sort of middle of the year to the back end of the year, there should be quite a lot of activity happening on site. Another project that fits within the enabling packages is the power upgrades. So as part of the construction of the stadium, it's really important that we have temporary power to enable the construction. So we're looking at a 2 MVA and a 1.5 MVA substation being installed this calendar year. So Tas Networks will look after the installation of the substations, and we'll look after the trenching and cabling to run them to the location. So here you can see in the drawing the northern substation, which essentially has a trench running all the way across the top of the site, and then a substation up in the far north corner. Another package in terms of maximising the infrastructure capacity is the water augmentation. So we've got a couple of water mains that need to be upgraded outside of the site. So because they're outside of the site, they don't fall under the order, they actually fall under a separate planning process. That's just a fairly standard planning process through council. And that's upgrading the 2 water mains to make sure there's sufficient capacity for stadium operations later on for firefighting and water and the like. The package isn't necessarily, it doesn't need to be complete until the very end of stadium operations, but because we're trying to sort of spread out and smooth out the construction program, we're trying to get ahead and get this one done soon. So this will be coming out to market really shortly. We're expecting in the next couple of months to be tendering this and again commencing work this calendar year. And now on to the main dance, the stadium itself and the procurement process. So the stadium's effectively a 2-phase procurement process that consists of an EOI and then going into an RFT. And the overall procurement process will run for about 12 months, which is fairly typical of a project of this scale. The EOI itself, so the EOI phase has already commenced, so that was released in early January. The EOI period is now closed and the assessment is underway. The intent of the EOI is to shortlist down to 2 preferred tenderers to go through to the next phase. So the EOI really focuses on company capacity, capability, previous experience, the team that's offered, and really importantly, the approach the companies have to social and economic benefits and how they're going to tackle that in the coming phases in the construction. The EOI is planned to be complete by early April, which we then move into the next phase, which is the RFT phase. So the RFT phase is actually broken up into then 2 stages. The RFT phase will run, the first phase is a competitive phase with the 2 shortlisted contractors from the EOI. That runs for a period and then we shortlist down into a single contractor is the current preference, albeit we reserve the right to take 2 through to the final stage, which then allows ideally that single contractor to work with all the local subcontractors and bigger trade packages and the like, to finalise the offer and then go through into final close and contract. Really importantly in that final stage, we'll also be progressing the design. So we'll talk a little bit about where we're at in the design and the design steps and trade packages in a second, but that package allows the contractor to get in and start working with the design and bringing the innovation and things to close out that final part. In terms of the form of contract, I'd say it's a heavily amended 4902 that will be used as a base contract. The procurement methodology is a DD&C, so for those that aren't familiar, that's a design, development and construct, which essentially is a D&C, but we've already taken the design a fairly long way through the process, and the consultant that's led the design gets novated across to the head contractor. In terms of local benefit, obviously the stadium's a really large, complex project, and we haven't built too many in Tasmania before. That probably goes without saying. So there isn't naturally a whole series of contractors locally that are experienced in building large stadiums, but it doesn't mean we can't play a really important role in contributing to it. And we certainly see it as a real opportunity to leave a legacy for Tasmania with a big anchor project like this in Hobart. So in terms of some of the things that we've already hardwired into the process, and there'll be more that we'll do as we progress through it and work with the potential tenderers, but the procurement process really importantly focuses on local benefits at every stage. So there's a state policy that says we have to have a 30% weighting. So there's a 30% weighting in the EOI phase and then the RFT, both the RFT phases. So at every stage we're considering local benefits, and in particular focus on how do we maximise the increase in trade capacity and experience and apprenticeships and those sort of things. So how do we get the benefit to the local construction industry particularly? The procurement process has been selected to maximise local engagement. So that two-stage process, it deliberately takes a long time, both to allow us to work through with the tenderers, but also to allow that time for market engagement, and particularly that second phase. Whilst we're finalising design, we can then finalise trade packages, have them going out to market, and having subcontract packages and the like agreed. We also want to leverage existing networks and systems. So as part of this process, we've done a fair bit of research, both locally, so we've spoken to a lot of contractors around previous experiences and what they found works and doesn't work to maximise benefits. And then we've also been speaking to other states, so people like Development Victoria, and how do they do it and what do they do and how do they maximise benefits. And one of the key themes we've heard consistently is to try and leverage and build on existing systems and networks rather than going and establishing something totally new that's foreign and is a standalone. We'll hear from ICN a bit later about how we're trying to tap into and build ICN's capacity in the market rather than setting something else up. We want to utilise the highly capable industry that we already have in Tasmania, and I've worked in Tasmania for a while. I'm a big believer in the Tasmanian contracting and subcontracting market, and certainly the test rig has been a great little test case of exactly that, just how good and capable the Tasmanian industry is. We want to take opportunities to prepare the local market, so that's today. There'll be, I'm sure, multiple engagements throughout the process, but we want to try and give you as much information as we possibly can as early as we can, so you can prepare for what's coming and the size and the scale and the timing. One of the key requirements in the RFT will be the establishment of a connectivity manager. So that's really just a dedicated role designed to connect all of the different systems and processes, the GTOs, the subcontractors, the contractors, the apprentices, and make sure that everyone's talking to one another. We know it gets pretty complicated when you start getting into that space. We want to make sure there's a dedicated resource to make sure it happens. The other one is we're looking at appointing some nominated GTOs to help assist with that apprentice and training. As you know, we will try and meet or exceed the policy which states we have to have at least 20% of all hours work going to training, and we want to make sure we do that. But we want to do it in a meaningful way that we get apprentices out at the end of the project, and that's a challenge on any big project because they don't typically run for long enough to be able to get a full apprenticeship through, and particularly when you start looking at the trade package lengths and things like that. So we're trying to work with GTOs, training organisations and the like to have a look at how do we do that. And again, we'll be working with the tenderers in the next phase on that as well. And then there's a standard suite of mechanisms in the contract to protect subcontractors as well, because we appreciate whatever risk we take and we pass on often flows down through to the subcontracting market, and we appreciate we play a really important role in making sure the risk is managed appropriately all the way through the procurement process. And that's the quick summary of the procurement process and the trade packages. And now hand over to Tony, who is the Principal Project Manager, to just talk a little bit about the design stages and where we've got to.
Thank you, Sam. So what we wanted to do here is really talk about a bit of the journey that the project's been on to get to where we are. And for those who have been watching over the last 18 months or so, you appreciate that it has been on a fairly large journey to get here. So we started back around 2024, there was a number of user group and stakeholder briefings, so it's taking into account a lot of what the AFL cricket require as part of their stadium requirements that work through concept and schematic design phases, which are fairly typical for a large project of this nature. Went through a reasonably public planning process, which I'm sure most of you saw and aware of, which created the order that Sam's touched on. And really the focus of the design team has been on design development, so taking a lot of the areas that have all been locked in and agreed with all the users and turning it into a set of design development documents to 70% complete. And one of the reasons for that is to, which we'll talk about in a second, is to leave some opportunity for head contractors, local contractors, suppliers to really be involved in that last bit of the design process. And all that it comes together in what's called a principal's project requirement. So a lot of people will be familiar with that sort of document, sets out what the principal requires, how the contractors to operate in sort of developing the final design and working their way into construction. So as Sam said, we're ready to commence that RFT phase. The documents are being prepared so that, come early April, we're ready to take those two contractors from the EOI phase into those RFT process, and that'll be a really intensive process that hopefully a lot of suppliers, contractors will start seeing some information coming out into the market, which we'll talk about. So just as a very quick snapshot, and this is what happens when project managers put together slides, it becomes a bit colourful. But so since 2024, that team has been working through design development. We're in that red arrow at the moment. This head contractor expression of interest process is underway, will be complete to enable us to start our tender process in April. At that time, the contractors will work through their stage one and then convert to a stage two. What I guess we wanted to touch on is really, which will lead into what some of the architects and the engineers will talk about, is the trade packages, which will have a lot of information around how they've been put together. But that part of early 2027 is when you'll start seeing the IFC packages issued for construction drawings being prepared. And that's when the head contractor will be doing their really heavy letting as they sort of start working away on their construction program. What we wanted to touch on is just also the opportunities into the balance of the design. So as we sort of touched on, the design team's taken it to 70% design development. There's 30% still to do, plus obviously create the issue for construction. What we're really looking for from those contractors, those head contractors during that RFT stage, is their innovative ideas, their value management, their engineering opportunities. We've got a really great set of consultants, but we also appreciate there's different ways to do things. There's more efficient ways potentially. There's slightly different ways which may or may not suit local market. There's been a lot of engagement with the consultants, with market suppliers to date. But that's not to say we haven't, there aren't other further opportunities. So what we're looking for from those head contractors during that RFT stage is to bring some of those smarts to the table. And then should they be successful, they'll be worked through into IFC documentation and into construction on a trade-by-trade basis. So what you'll hear from shortly is the architects, interior designers, engineers. They'll take you through some of the detail that's included in a lot of those packages, which will give you a really good feel for how the contractor will likely set it up for letting. Just in terms of timing, as we touched on, Sam touched on, from around early April, those two head contractors will start their RFT stage. What you'll likely hear from them in around April is they'll start talking to suppliers, major subcontractors around what they'll be looking for as part of that tender process. So that'll happen through April. The actual trade packages, in terms of IFC documents, will likely start from January next year. So from January next year through to 2029 with some of the later packages, which will come towards the later parts of the projects, potentially some of the landscaping, wayfinding, signage, those sort of things that sort of come towards the back end. They'll happen. So what you'll see from the consultants shortly is these key trade packages. We've sort of broken them up into a number of key elements that the team will talk through. There's obviously large structural packages, there's large roof packages, there's large services components which the team will talk through, and there's also a number of precinct services packages which will tie into some of the early work that will happen on site. So from here, I'm just going to hand over to Stu Harper, who is one of the directors from Cox, to take you through the architectural. Thanks, Stu.
Thanks, Tony, Sam and Anne. My name is Stuart Harper. I'm from Cox Architecture. We are the lead design consultant with a whole suite of very capable engineering consultants under us who will come up after me. I'm going to give a quick overview of the design, the approach, what the stadium is, what it's designed to do, and then the team will come up and give a very detailed breakdown of what the scope of each of the trade packages is. Remember, there are questions that you can lodge through this phase with the QR code, so please scan the QR code. The questions are being monitored, and I think Sam and Tony will jump up and sort of send them to the relevant people at the relevant times. So a couple of quick key features of the stadium. It's 23,000 seats plus an additional 1,500 standing room for sporting events. And 31,500 for concerts too. So that includes people standing on the pitch. That's how we get those numbers up. There's a major function room here too, which is a pretty significant thing for Hobart. So we talk about a multi-purpose stadium that includes events beyond events that happen on the pitch. So this is a 1,500 person seated function room with a great view out towards Kunani. Pretty significant roof. Obviously, that's one of the key features of this stadium, and it's a world first in the sense of its span as a hybrid timber steel fixed ETFE roof. There's a few caveats to achieve that number, but yes, none of the technologies there are unproven. So hybrid steel and timber roofs exist, dome roofs of this scale exist, and ETFE over natural grass exists. It's that unique combination that we're seeing here for the first time. In terms of its clearance, we'll go through that in a bit of detail, but it is 51 metres clear inside to the underside of that dome. Externally, we've got a 360-degree accessible concourse, so that's for unpaid patrons. If you haven't got your ticket yet, you're trying to walk around the ground and find where to get in, and that's fully accessible with lifts and ramps. We've also got an internal 360-degree concourse at grade, at level, which allows you to move around the concourse, move between your seats and your toilets and bars with a view of the ground. So you're constantly engaged with the action on the pitch even while you're moving around. We'll talk a bit more about the field of play, multi-sport field, as well as the intimate seating bowl. So what we mean by that is because it's a relatively small capacity stadium at 23,000, it gives us the opportunity to really push those seats super close to the action. So you will actually be, in your upper tier here, you'll be closer to the action than many of the other grounds around the country. We've talked briefly, and Sam's taken you through all the project scope, but this is just to effectively outline in black what the scope of the main procurement is, with the rest of the precinct works coming under separate packages. Anne's done a wonderful job of describing the site historically to us and the context. It is worth just understanding that from a design perspective, these have influenced not only the look and feel of the building, but the spatial arrangement, where you can get in, how people move around, where the aspects of the different elements of the stadium are aligned to. So obviously we've got Tas Ports to the east and the cruise terminal, which has large numbers of people moving through the site, so a real opportunity to engage from a tourism perspective. We've got the historic wharf buildings along Hunter Street and Evans Street there, which add to the character of the place. We've got some transport infrastructure that we need to integrate in terms of bus interchange, taxi drop-off, car parking and the like. There's also a significant arterial road that runs to one side of the site, which sort of informed spatially setbacks from that road to make sure we've got safe gathering spaces for people. We've also got some other heritage interfaces to be considered, the Goodshed, which has been touched on, but also the Royal Engineers Building, which stays in situ, obviously, as part of the site, and then the sensitive interfaces with Queen's Domain and the Cenotaph on the north, and the new bit of infrastructure, the Northern Access Road, which DSG are delivering, but provides a vital link to our site. What that all results in when we put that in the mix is this site plan here. And what this is showing is effectively an active ground plane in yellow. This shows you where people can move in and around the stadium. There's been some conjecture as to whether or not there is enough room on the site, but we've done all of the pedestrian modelling to prove that there's ample space to move safely around the site. And one of the key design features of this stadium, one of the sort of the best practice thing you can do is to separate cars and people. And so what we've been able to do is to put all of that service infrastructure, vehicle movements, loading docks, player arrival and drop off, waste, all of that sits below this pedestrian level that you're seeing here in yellow. So people can move freely around the entire perimeter of the building without being, without conflicting with traffic movements and vehicle movements during a game. So that adds to obviously the safety of arrival, but also the quality of the spaces, the urban and open spaces around this stadium. So it's not just active on a game day, but it's a valuable and meaningful place to be outside of those events. You can also see that the main plazas are kind of aligned to the main desire lines back through the city. So main Gate 1 plaza there on the southeast really aligns to that ant track through Sullivan's Cove and into the building there, and pulls people away from that hostile vehicle road on the west there. So this is that Gate 1 plaza. Again, as we said, it's a generously proportioned space. It's able to handle the volumes of people coming and going on major event days, the queuing and security checks associated with that, but also is a large enough space to be active and activated outside of major events. We expect retail opportunities, but also a space that could be programmed with things like markets and the like. I mentioned it was a multi-purpose arena or venue. What we mean by that is that it's not just an AFL stadium. Whilst the field of play is designed for the dimensions of an AFL field, which you may or may not know is not consistent across the country. There is no fixed AFL field dimension, so we've worked closely with the AFL to arrive on the optimum dimensions of the field of play for this site. So it's slightly smaller than the MCG, but it is about the size of the Marvel Stadium. That means we can also fit cricket in. We've got 5 wicket blocks in the middle for both T20 and Test cricket to fit there, running in a north-south orientation. And then, of course, we can fit soccer and NRL on that field of play too. Concerts is the other big thing that we see coming here. So we've designed the stadium in such a way that it has a flexible stage pocket that we call that allows a lot of those heavy movements that come and go when you're bumping in and loading stages to not affect the grass. And you can see we load a lot of people in onto that field of play. We've also designed it in such a way that the southern Gate 1 plaza has a series of removable seats so that all of those people that are on the field of play, the 15,000 people that are in the mosh pit, can come and go directly from the plaza without having to step up and then come back down again. So that helps again with easing congestion but also improving the patron experience at the game. The other thing the design incorporates is a series of rigging points to hang curtains for reduced mode. So there may even be a scenario where you might bump in, say, a basketball for a big Jack Jumpers final or something like that. This is just an image of how it looks inside the ground in cricket mode. This is an evening match, Hurricanes playing here, and you can see that there's a good atmosphere achieved through that consistent seating bowl, and the roof provides an opportunity to really brand the venue and make it unique for this place. And this is contemplating a day game for AFL. And that's just an indicative concert mode with that northern stage end in play. I mentioned the geometry of the roof briefly. We have done a fair bit of research with cricket through the Hawkeye technology, tracking what the sort of biggest hits are in terms of the ball trajectory and making sure that roof geometry accommodates that sort of arced movement of those balls to make sure that we're not interfering with the gameplay and running the risk of the ball hitting the structure and being out. The other advantage, I suppose, of that type of dome geometry is that we can really reduce the visual bulk of the stadium. So by pulling it down at the edges where we don't need the height and only providing the height in the middle, it does mean that we're able to get the edge of the building down to about the same height as the parapet level across the Evans Street edge. So from how it appears at eye level on the street, it significantly reduces what that facade area is, but also the visual bulk of that edge of the building. As Sam mentioned, the roof's there primarily to provide comfort to patrons within the ground, but that then adds a few challenges. One of the things that grass needs to grow, and Jared will talk about this in a bit more detail, obviously you need sunlight and water, but what people don't tend to know is that it also needs air movement to grow. So there's a really fine balance here of making sure that the roof is providing comfort to patrons, but also providing enough ventilation, natural ventilation for air movement across the grass, but also enough ventilation for people sat within the bowl. You know, we've done a lot of studies with the engineering team around the greenhouse effect, making sure the thing's not going to heat up too much. So there's been a series of computational fluid dynamic models done to check that we've got exactly that right balance, just enough breeze to get the grass to grow and to keep you cool in hot days, but not so much that you're experiencing wind discomfort and you may as well not have the roof. So we've worked hard to find that sweet spot. The other thing that the design of the roof does is because it's a naturally ventilated environment with inside, there's no mechanical fans or air conditioning pumping air in. To keep air moving, we've taken advantage of what's called the stack effect. So hot air rises, and we've got vents at the top of the roof that open on a hot day. The hot air will move up, drawing up and out like a chimney. You can see here on the right image there where the hot air is at the top, and that draws in the cooler air underneath. That makes sure that we have an internal environment within the stadium that's always plus or minus 5 degrees from the external environment. So what that open ventilation translates to is a covered seating bowl environment and a covered concourse environment under the seating bowl, but with some access to natural ventilation above those concession zones. So you can see here how it would feel moving along that concourse. You can see through the left continuous visual connection with the ground, and then on the right a series of Tasmanian themed food, beverage, bars and the like. So we've worked hard with our local consultants and also stakeholders to deliver a look and feel of this architecture that feels of this place and couldn't be anywhere else. In terms of other materials within the design, each of these will go through in a bit more detail in the trade packages, but we've talked about the roof in ETFE. We've got a series of cement sheet and blockwork facades and concrete facades as well. There's glazed atria, aluminium fin facades as well, and some large profile metal deck cladding on the roof for the solid portion around the edges as well. We've touched on the goods shed physically, what it is, where it is, and what needs to happen, and Sam's taken you through the procurement there, but we see the goods shed as a really fabulous opportunity to integrate a really unique hospitality offering within the future stadium environment. And so you've seen where it's positioned on the north, tucked in at the side of the escarpment on the north side of the ground. It is lifted up so that the floor level of the goods shed will be level with that concourse environment that we just showed you before. And we think that this, you know, we talk about the stadium environment, the experience of being there being unmistakably or uniquely Tasmanian. We really think this is going to be one of those spaces that sets this place apart. So you can see this is a proposed fit out within the goods shed environment that on match day will be a real extension to that bar and restaurant environment of the concourse, where members and general public can come in and get a great beer from the bar and hang out with your mates before and after the game. But we also see it as a really fabulous and unique hospitality offering outside of major events, and the stadium operators have started having conversations with various catering providers who are really excited about bringing this unique offer to the market in Tasmania. Sam's touched on this, but you can see On this diagram, the dashed orange lines are the former rail alignments, and as part of our heritage response to maintain the relationship between the functional relationship of trains driving into a goods shed, its new location is still relevant to previous alignment of the railway. This is the view from Gate 3, again the other side of the goods shed, that provides level access directly through to the concourse into the goods shed with a view down over the cricket practice wickets. And you can see here in section what I mean. That's where the shed will sit level-wise relative to the field of play. You'll be able to get glimpses through the concourse, through the walls of the shed down to the field of play as well. So book your table early and you'll get the best view of the game with a beer in hand. And it sits above that service road that I mentioned, running underneath through that stage pocket area. I'll just really quickly give you an overview of the building's functions, level by level, what's actually going on within the stands, and then after that we'll jump into the specifics of how much concrete, how much steel, etc. So this is what we're calling level 0. I mentioned earlier that we've separated out the functional back-of-house movements from the patron-facing front-of-house movements. This is that heavy lifting back-of-house level. You come in, you can see that on the right-hand side of the screen, that's a dive structure or a ramp coming from the service, the new Northern Access Road down into this service road. It's a one-directional road, and coloured there in orange, that takes you through past the outside broadcast area and boneyards for concerts there in purple. And as you move around in green, you've got player areas, so warm-up, change rooms, showers, etc., officials areas, and that practice wicket we spoke about that's accessed off this level. As you move around, you've got waste, you've got deliveries, kitchens, etc., and then in the purple on the left-hand side of the screen is all your casual staff areas, etc. There are also 2 gates at this level. So people who arrive at Evans Street level can either come to gate 1, that's that main plaza I showed you, and come up lifts and stairs to the concourse level, or directly through to the field of play in concert mode. And then gate 2 is our premium gate, and that's on the southwest of the site, and that has escalators and the like that will take you up through the building on that side. The other patron-facing elements at this level is the image in the middle there of the Field Club, and hatched in dark green. So that's a Tasmanian first. It's an exclusive experience where you have a hospitality environment. You can view through windows into the home team warm-up area, and then you can watch the team run out onto the field through the players' race. The next level up, this is the general concourse level. And at this level, you've got gates 2B, 3 and 4. So those are the 2 images that I showed you either side of the goods shed previously. People will be coming from either the bus drop-off area or walking in from the north and can come straight through at grade with a concourse, no need to level change. You can see the colours on this image are differentiating between the premium stand and the general admission stand in blue. We designed the building to be efficient for its scale, and so what that means is at 23,000 people, there's a certain percentage of those that are premium ticket holders that have a level of service with a higher level of service, catered kitchens and hospitality spaces. So we keep all of that serviced elements of the building in one stand, so we call it a service stand on the west of the ground, and that's where you saw all those player change rooms and kitchens. That'll link directly to lifts up to all of the premium hospitality at this concourse environment, restaurants and sports bars, and then up to the suites and function room above. So all of that's consolidated in a single stand on the west, and then on the east and north and south, we've got that really intimate seating bowl with a lower bowl, so that's about 12 to 15 rows of seats that come down from the concourse, step down, and then there's an upper bowl which takes stairs up to seats above, and that gives you that elevated view. And that whole blue area is serviced by a huge range of bars and restaurants, as well as grab and go, which are outlets where you can effectively sort of grab your beers and it scans your card and you leave. So a high throughput, so there won't be long queues to get a drink during half time. There's also a level 1 MES premium function room on the south of the ground. This is associated with cricket primarily, but will also be used during AFL, and this is the product that sits directly behind the bowler's arm. Above that, you can see in blue, that's the upper tier or the upper bowl, which has the rest of those general admission seats in there. You can see where the roof of that goods shed is coming in. And then there in yellow is really our primary function room and hospitality level. So centrally within that is the large 1,500 person function room we spoke about, a series of kitchens and toilets to support those, and 12 hospitality suites. We've also got access from this level what's called OCRs. They're effectively open corporate reserve is what it stands for, but they're corrals of sort of 6, 8 and 10 seats within the seating bowl that are serviced. So you get your meals and your drinks brought to you in your seat. You have a little corralled environment with much easier access in and out. So all of that is sitting there on that western side of the ground. And then in purple on the south is the cricket media area. So that's a dedicated media pod for all of the cricket broadcast needs, as well as a function room associated with that. This just shows some of the flexibility of the layout of that main 1,500 person function room. So when we quote 1,500, we're talking about banquet mode, shown there in the top left at round tables of 10. But we can also host larger capacities in, say, lecture mode or lounge mode, or even, in a full stand-up cocktail function. So it's quite a flexible space, and there's a series of operable walls that help carve it up into different uses. You can see in the bottom right, this is probably how it would be configured on an AFL game day, where you'd have a 300 person dining function, you'd have a central sort of a buffet style area, and then potentially an a la carte restaurant as well at that level. And then on level 3, on the west stand, this is predominantly, well, it's all back of house in the sense that it's operational spaces. So you've got media, coaches, written press, broadcast, everything is dedicated on this level 3 here. So that's effectively the guts of what's inside the building. So hopefully that gives everyone a sense of what's there. What I'm going to do now is introduce you to various members of the engineering team, and we're going to take you through in sort of quite a bit of detail each of the individual trade packages as they come through. Again, reminder for the QR code, if you've got questions, please scan them. Are there any you want to throw to now?
No, we've got one, but we'll deal with that in the wrap-up, I think.
Brilliant, no worries. We'll jump straight into trade packages now then. So Stephen's going to come up and take you through excavation and piling.
Thanks, Stuart. As Ben's outlined, the geotechnical strategy for the site is complex by its nature. The historical underlying geology plus the historical ground reclamation means that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach that needs to be adopted. It's also recognised as part of the contractor value engineering process. Temporary works is going to be a key factor in this, in that a lot of the loadings that will be critical to ground improvement will probably be governed during that temporary works roof construction phase. As we work across the site, the investigations have identified that across the northern block of the site, near the cenotaph, we're expecting to experience hard dolerite and groundwater. The dolerite, some of it will be easy digging, but we are experiencing zones where we are getting upwards over 100 MPa UCS, so compressive strength. So that will be a challenge, and it is further complicated by, as we've heard about already, a number of sensitive receivers nearby, so blasting is likely to be not feasible in that rock removal phase. As we moved to the Evans Street edge of the site, as was identified earlier, it's a historical rivulet paleo channel, so the bedrock is very deep and is overlain by alluvium and estuarine materials, as well as that historical reclamation material. In that zone, the rock is relatively to moderately steep, dipping just because of the way the natural rock formation was formed. In that zone, we've currently envisaged what they call controlled modulus columns with a load transfer platform as a ground improvement strategy. A range of other options exist to look to manage it, but we're critically concerned around issues such as liquefaction and long-term settlement in those softer materials that are known to exist in that pocket of the site. The intermediate zone, we're expecting that could be done through excavation and replacement. In doing excavation and replacement, we could be looking to stabilise the existing material that's recovered on site. Could be looking at using geofabrics or other forms of ground improvement technology to again stabilise and provide a bridging layer to support that, critically that level 0 structure that Stuart talked to, which is the back of house infrastructure that sits down the bottom there. The main stadium structure is predominantly all piled or founded on rock, and Jochen will talk through that when he goes through the structural framework. One of the complications that will be talked about at a higher level is, again, just managing settlement across the playing surface. We are expecting that in that top far corner, there's a lightly shaded zone where rock might need to be removed just to, again, ensure that the playing surface doesn't sit both on rock and on the historical fill. So, again, trying to ensure that we don't have the need for that playing surface to have or be required to do unnatural bridging. It's just not practical. That was at a high level summary, the nature of it. It is going to be very much value-led with the contractors. The uncontrolled historical reclamation strategy means we are seeing, in terms of pavements, external footprints, ground strength varying between for those in the room that understand it, CBRs anywhere from 2 to 12. So the ground is very soft across large extents of it. So a well-considered approach that manages that construction loading through to the eventual pavement operational life will be key. Thank you. I'll now hand over to Jochen, who will take you through the structure.
Thanks, Stephen. My name's Jochen Ristig. I'm the project director on behalf of ACOM, leading the engineering disciplines. And I will start talking through the piling. So based on what Stephen was saying, also from Anne, I guess the history of the site means that the rock levels are varying, and the image shows how the stadium design responds to that. So the northwestern part of the stadium can actually be founded on shallow footings, so pads directly on the rock. And as the dolerite drops off, piles need to be used, and the piles will be of varying lengths. So just to give an indication of the size of the package, we've got 344 piles currently, with an average length of 11.5 metres, but the longest pile will be in the order of 22 to 25 metres. In total, it's almost 4 kilometres of piling, just again to have the stats there. The vertical elements that are being supported on piles are predominantly on a single pile arrangement, so a single pile per column. And obviously depending on the loading they're carrying, they vary in diameter. The smallest one is 600, the largest one is 1200. Under the lift cores and shear walls, there will be pile groups, and they're the heaviest loaded ones. We do have 77 tension piles to deal with some of the uplift forces that the cores have to deal with. We're expecting varying levels of groundwater, and so the piling will have to address that. It's likely that sleeving will be required for the piling. At the piling rig, we'll have to sit on a temporary working platform. And the sequencing of the pile installation will obviously need to be coordinated with the advancing of the bowl structure. Then moving into the in situ concrete. There's a total floor area of 23,000 square metres. Most of the concrete horizontal elements are built in situ concrete. I guess working through the elements, so pile caps will just deal obviously with the size transition of the piles to the columns. Columns are currently in situ, ranging in sizes from about 600 diameter to 750 diameter for the typical columns, but then some of the heavy loaded elements are up to 1400 by 600 in cross-sectional area supporting the roof loading. The shear walls are typically 250 millimetre thick and designed to have a boundary element, so a column at each end to simplify the detailing. And the core walls range in thickness between 250 to 350 for some of the harder working walls. The ground slab is typically 150 thick slab on ground, pretty typical construction with just regular jointing and saw cutting. There are some heavier loaded areas that are 200 thick for storage and heavier loading, and the ring road that goes through the north and west of the stadium will actually be designed as a pavement slab, so that's thicker and isolated from the ground slab. The level one, the upper floor levels are designed as post-tensioned band beam and slab systems. Typically the slabs are 180 mil thick, but in some areas they go up to 250 just to suit the spans. Given the radial arrangement of the stadium, obviously the slab spans vary somewhat. And likewise, the band beams, they range from 450 to 750 depending on their loading, and they start at 1200 width, but some go up to 3 metres to capture whether it's vomitory walls or some of the transfers that may need to occur. We've come up with a proposed port jointing system of sort of ranging between 15 to 40 metres. There will be permanent movement joints separating the stand into segments, and in the western stand there is one temporary movement joint that we need to allow given the size of the floor plate. So we want some of the early shrinkage to occur before we finalise the final configuration. There will be some backpropping requirements that need to be coordinated with the construction progress, and something to work through obviously once subcontractors and the main contractor are on board are some of the additional loading requirements or enhancements to cater for any construction loading. They're currently not included in the design as yet. So we split the precast concrete into two slides. One is the precast plats, because obviously there's a lot of them and they're highly repetitive. So there is about 860 plats, individual elements, a quarter of them in the lower bowl and 3/4 of them in the upper bowl. There are 5 different plat types in the lower bowl and 10 different plat types in the upper bowl. However, the majority is very repetitive, and there's just some bespoke solutions to deal with some interfaces. And the plat types typically are single plat, double plat, and a cantilever plat, and they're based on sort of standard industry molds that are used in stadium construction. The largest element by weight is 22 tonnes, and the long span's 15 metres. And so there's obviously a mixture between single and double plat to optimise what can to suit the transport configurations. Most of the plats, particularly longer spans, are pre-tensioned. Again, it's fairly standard detailing for these plats to maximise their spanning capacity. And then it's not uncommon to install the upper tier before the lower tier, so there's more closer access possible, and that needs to just be coordinated with the craneage planning for the construction of the stand. There are some in-situ interfaces with the floor plates, so again they just need to be considered when at the interfaces between the concourse and the plats. Whilst I've called up the rakers on the previous slides, there's 40 of them. They're probably better visible on this slide. So the lower bowl beam supports for the plats are precast concrete rakers that are typically 1 metre deep and 600 wide. They are in the order of 20 tonnes in terms of transport as well. And then the rest of the precast that is covered on this slide is mainly precast walls. They're predominantly 200 mil thick and cover the facade panels, balustrade upstands and retaining walls. They are conventionally reinforced, and I guess the 3D image actually gives a bit of an indication of the layout, and they're fairly simple in their construction. And again, they need to be sequenced with the in situ work. Currently the stairs are detailed as in situ, so there'll be some tie-in details. I'll talk through the elements of the bolt steelwork. So the image on the top right shows the raker arrangement. So we've adopted a double raker solution where 2 rakers sort of straddle the vomitory walls. It does have the benefits that there's no additional columns coming down onto the concourse and allows a seamless circulation. The typical rakers, which is covering the majority of the bowl, is based on an 800 welded beam, so an off-the-shelf size. However, there are some bespoke rakers on the edges and at the interfaces that are welded boxes. The concourse food and beverage structures are single-storey, fairly simple steelwork based on braced frames. The function room roof is a clear span to achieve the function room that Stuart described. It's in the order of 20 metre span of trusses that are tapering average depth of 2 metres. They're detailed with UC cords, so 250 UC sections, again standard sections welded together, and obviously to have enough stiffness to support the requirements of an operable wall. The media facility is, you can see on the bottom image on the right, is a roof, again a single-storey roof, simple construction. There are some clear span requirements. The largest beam there is a 530 UB. But they are fairly small elements. And then the entrance facades are rectangular hollow sections, 250 RHSs, again fairly small elemental sizes and simple construction. And the total size of the steel package is about 990 tonnes. Now we worked very hard to avoid site welding, and the detailing is currently based on bolted connections where we can. Typically for the bold steelwork, we managed to adopt a fire-engineered solution to avoid protective coating, but there are some areas where it's close to fire sources where protective coating is required. Currently, and I'll touch on this later when we get to the roof, but as a principle, the roof structure is separate from the bolt structure, and it does simplify the construction progression. However, there's obviously a strong interface in how the works are sequenced, so they're not working on top of each other. And with that, I'll hand over to Sean to talk through the building services packages.
Thanks. I'm Sean O'Leary. I'm representing the building services for AECOM. First of all, I'll just touch on the mechanical services and the key features that support the project. Stuart touched on the CFD analysis, which we've done extensively over a number of months to get patron comfort correct. The openings around the stadium, I guess, has influenced through that CFD analysis as well, so that we can get that airflow throughout the stadium and also for the ventilation and the grass growth as well. It acts as make-up air as well for some of the smoke exhaust systems throughout the stadium. You'll note there on area or point number 2 where we have the chilled water and heating hot water pumping stations and heat exchangers located around that eastern side of the stand. Our main air handling plant is located on the western stand. at level 1 mezzanine area, and the level 3 AHUs that serve all those function spaces, kitchen areas that Stuart has presented earlier. The southern stand where the cricket pod is mainly in-ceiling fan coil units with heat recovery included in those fan coil unit systems. There's ventilation throughout the stadium for the toilet exhaust around the concourse, and the service road ventilation is included as well as an enclosed space. The commercial kitchens on the western side, located at 6 on the western stand side, is complete with kitchen cleaning equipment as well. Some of these go through the roof and some come out the side of the facade as well. Smoke management system is exhausted through the roof, and also the stair pressurization system, which is all down the western side of the stand. I guess that a lot of the main plant is down that western side where we have that heavy activity of function spaces, kitchens, and etc. The goods shed area has radiant heating panels, natural ventilation, and kitchen and toilet exhaust to the facade. The key features of the hydraulic systems, just located on number 1 there, we got the Sewer Infrastructure Authority connection at the northern end at the service road. Under the stands at the southern western section we have hot water generation system, which is comprising of 4 30 kilowatt electric heat pumps, 3,000 litre storage tanks, and the recirculating pumps. The hydraulic plant space for the cold water storage is located on the southern end. Here we have the 70,000 litre cold water break tanks and the booster pumps, rainwater storage, and the rainwater treatment plant as well. Below ground then at the western side again we have the grease arresters, sewer pump station, and silt traps all accessible within that location. The wide array of roof structure obviously has a huge drainage system, which is designed to be a siphonic drainage system throughout, and the goods shed then has its own separate goods shed roof drainage system, hot water units for the goods shed, and amenities as well around the concourse for F&B areas as well with their own hot water units. Key area of the electrical services is the 2 MVS substations located at northern and southern ends, located at number 1, and the authority engagement has already been undertaken with those connections. The main switchboards are located in close proximity at point number 2 at the northern southern zones. These are Form 3 switchboards with bus ties linking these together for added redundancy. These are based on modular type solutions which have been tested for spatial outcomes. The UPS battery systems are split through the northern and southern sections, spreading those loads, and these are based on an N+1 modular solution. The sports lighting, which is one of the key features of the stadium, has been done in accordance with the AFL and cricket broadcasting requirements. The containment systems and cable tray reticulation are quite extensive throughout. We have some high-level gantry systems around the high-level structure, which also has DBs located along this gantry system. These are connected also through northern and southern end risers located up there as well. The allowances, I guess, for the sports lighting system as well, just got to be careful that we include it for the commissioning and lighting surveying throughout, as this will be an extensive part of the testing and commissioning. The key features of the fire services system, the main infrastructure at the Services Road northern end, we have the fire tanks at 510 litres thousand capacity. We've driven pump set and fire booster supplies. The fire control room also located accessible at this end of the stadium, where we have the fire detection control room. We have the FIP panels, FFC panels, and signalling equipment all located in here. This includes a full extensive EWS system as well. The sprinkler control valve room is located at that northeastern end as well. And we have a fire hydrant ring main located at the western side that connects the internal and external hydrant systems and has direct access for a vehicle hard stand as well. There's a design of the fire sprinkler system throughout the stadium in accordance with the local standards and BCA compliance, and we have eliminated some of the sprinkler systems to areas that have sensitive equipment or sensitive spaces, such as the substation and UPS rooms. We have smoke detection, as I said, and EWIS system throughout the stadium as well. The access for patrons throughout the stadium, including goods lifts, are located with passenger lifts on the western side. Predominantly, we've got goods lift and passenger lifts co-located here with escalators, getting you up and down the western stadium side, or stand side. At the southern side, we have we've also got lifts located down near the cricket end, the southern stand. And also we've got up the northern end, we've got more passenger lifts located on that end. I'll hand it back over to Jochen.
Thanks for that. Now, the roof was actually designed by our German engineering partners, SBP. And they are world leaders in designing stadia, and whilst I think we talked, or Sam alluded to it before, this might be a unique structure in Hobart, they've designed very similar structures in the past, and on a global stage it's nothing unique. Now, as I talk through the different components of the roof, it's probably important to also understand sort of the evolution of the design and the philosophy behind it. This is the outcome of a rigorous option assessment and optimization process, and I guess as a team we landed on the dome being the most suitable geometry for the roof, and it achieves the architectural intentions of bringing the edges down, but providing the clearance in the centre of the pitch. But it also provides a very, very efficient structural solution. Now, the geometry of the roof is actually based on a torus. A torus is effectively a donut, and then to create the geometry of the dome, it's just a slice cut through that torus. Now, the benefits of that base geometry is that when each of the longitudinal and transverse rings or the grids are put on top of that, their interface is always the same. So the angles as these members intersect are identical, and it just simplifies the detailing fabrication significantly. So once we decided on the grid shell, we then overlaid a grid and optimise that to 20 metres, which is based on really the spanning capacity of the cladding material. So the ETFE pillows can typically span 5 metres, and so we wanted to break it into multitudes of 5 metres. So the 20 metres was the best outcome, and so it's a 20 by 20 metre grid of the primary steel elements. The longitudinal elements are curved, and then the intersecting elements are faceted, which then also benefits the secondary elements, which is the layer of timber beams that are spanning the 20 metres to create that 5 metre distance for the pillows. So the secondary timber structure are straight timber beams. They are 600 deep by 280 wide. And they're designed with the ability to be spliced, so that the maximum timber length that needs to be fabricated is 12 metres. The total volume of the timber is 350 tonnes, and the overall tonnage of the steel is 3,800 tonnes. Now, I did mention before when I talked about the bowl that the roof and the bowl structure are fundamentally separate. So the roof is supported on steel columns that come down to concourse level, and it does allow the overall roof structure to expand and contract freely without locking in any forces into the bowl. And just to give you an idea, just for temperature, the diameter of this grid shell can increase by 200 millimetres just through winter and summer, just through the effects of temperature. So it's quite significant, and it needed to be detailed accordingly. And as the roof interfaces with the premium stand, the ring beam is supported on bearings. Size-wise, the circumferential ring beam that runs around and captures the shell is a 1,200 square fabricated section. And the primary steel elements are 900 deep by 500 wide fabricated steel boxes. The ETFE cladding material is based on an inflated pillow system. Again, it's a very common system that's used in global stadium construction, and it's a 250 micron thick material. I might just talk through the erection sequence just to illustrate, I guess, the thinking that's gone into the construction of the dome. The complexity of the geometries in the erection and making sure that there is no temporary locked-in stresses embedded into the final condition. So we've come up with a possible sequence that obviously needs to still be developed with the final team that will actually build it, but we needed to make sure that we can demonstrate it can be built, and it requires some temporary propping in the centre of the pitch. We're currently proposing to build the centre component first, and then build out from the middle, and that deals with some of the tolerance and the fitting constraints. Currently, the detailing is based on bolted connections, but there is certainly some tight controls on tolerance. There'll be some pre-assembly requirements. There'll be some machine plates, just to make sure that the final geometry, which is fairly sensitive to intolerance, achieves the design outcome. And just once the primary steel structure is in place, there's some diagonal cable bracing just to stabilise the structure that is pre-tensioned. And with that, I'll hand over to Sam. If there's any questions that come unrelated to structure, we'll take them as they come through.
Thanks, Jochen. So to quickly run through the sustainability requirements for the stadium, it's important to note there's a Green Star rating applying to the project, Green Star buildings, and there's also Green Star rating, Green Star communities that will apply across the whole site. In terms of the Green Star buildings requirements, there's particular emphasis around upfront carbon emissions and a 20% reduction target that's required to achieve that. Particular significant portion of those emissions are related to the structure, the concrete and the steel, where in the order of 35% of that, the total stadium's emissions are associated with the concrete. So we're looking at in the order of 50% supplementary cementitious material for the in-situ concrete, and then in the order of 20 to 30% supplementary cementitious material for the precast components. The other key features around operational energy, there's significant reductions there, a 20% reduction target as a minimum, and there's PV associated on the western stand, and then efficient mechanical services and lighting, and also significant loads associated with video boards within the stadium. The other key features around potable water reduction, where we've got a 30% target associated with that Green Star Buildings rating, and efficient fixtures and fittings that service amenities within the stadium. And yeah, the most significant load is obviously the pitch irrigation without natural rainfall due to the roof. There's also some requirements around indoor environment quality, so things like finishes, the emissions of those finishes for paints, adhesives and sealants and those sort of requirements, as well as some mechanical ventilation, outdoor air requirements as well. And then circularity and waste, significant requirement during construction around achievement, diversion from landfill for construction demolition waste, and also operational waste, which is a significant component of the operational phase of the stadium. And then lastly, to touch on climate resilience, there's been extensive studies to look at the rainfall intensity, potential bushfire impacts, particularly with associated vegetation relatively nearby, and some operational measures to manage those risks, as well as integration of those considerations into the design. I think that is it on these slides. I'll pass across to Amy.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Amy Nelson from Cox Architecture and I'm the interiors lead for the project. Stu Harper's taken us through a good summary of the program throughout the stadium, but I'll look at some of the spaces in a little bit more depth in terms of finishes, lengths of joinery and then the kitchen functions. A key component to it is the hospitality product offering, and we've carefully considered a range of experiences for our patrons here, so that's a range of price points and so that it appeals to a broad demographic of users that will come to our stadium here. The intent is that it's adaptable so that, as we've mentioned, this is a multi-purpose stadium. It'll have a range of uses, different scales of activity here, and both on event and non-event day. The food and beverage offerings will be uniquely Tasmanian. We're hoping to feature Tasmanian food, wine, beer and spirits, and combined with a fit out that looks and feels authentically Tasmanian, we're hoping to provide a truly authentic fan experience here. So all those hospitality spaces that we just had up on the screen here are supported by a network of kitchen spaces. So we have 17 kitchens throughout, which also includes 22 walk-in cool rooms and 9 walk-in freezers and then 4 keg rooms. They're all electric. There's no provision for gas here in the stadium. The 3 keg rooms located at level 0 reticulate up to the 11 tap beer bars that we have throughout, and then there's 1 keg room at level 1 which reticulates to the goods shed. The kitchens have been designed to be adaptable and flexible so that it can cater to those different types of events and different scales. And the primary finishes for those are resin-based flooring system, ceramic wall tile and a stainless steel benching. So down on level 0, where we have our service ring road, is the main production kitchen. So during the week, all corporate food here will be produced, with some of the retail product also prepared here in the week leading up. And this has strategically been located in this location so that it has great access to the service ring road, the delivery loading and the goods lift. It's then supported by 190 square metres of storage nearby, which includes 4 walk-in cool rooms and 2 of the keg rooms mentioned. On the other side of the service road is the Field Club. As we spoke about, this is an exclusive space with access into the players warming up both the away teams and the home teams. The space here is deliberately meant to feel dark and moody and energetic. The stars of the show are in the bright lights of the warm-up spaces. So the finishes here are carpet with terracotta floor tile to the bar surrounds, a stainless steel mesh backlit bar front with stainless steel countertops. And this is all serviced by a 23 square metre kitchen, which is adjacent to the space. Up on level 1, we have all our food and beverage concessions, which are dotted along the continuous concourse on the outside edge there. We have, in the general admission area, we have a total of 10. 7 of those are grab and go, which I think Stu mentioned earlier was where you walk in, you pick up your hot chips, and then you pay on the way out. 2 of them are just walk out, which is a new technology where your credit card is scanned on the way in, you pick up your beverage from the fridge, and then AI charges your credit card on the way out. One of them is belly up, which is your traditional stand and order at the counter and collect your food that way. There's also 2 bars with tap beer, and one of them, the one over gate 1, is an impressive 30 metres in length. The primary finishes for the concessions are concrete blockwork walls and bar fronts with fibre cement sheet soffits and ceilings, and then stainless steel bench tops. The goods shed we've spoken about a fair bit. In terms of what we're inserting within the heritage fabric, is, we're being quite sensitive to the character of what is the existing facility, and we're adding in 2 volumes within the space, and that includes, one of them has a 120 square metre a la carte kitchen, and the other houses the amenities, and then we have an 18.5 metre long bar, and they're all clad in a backlit polycarbonate. Round on the western side of the concourse is our premium food and beverages. We have 5 belly up concessions here, and we also have a 150-person sports bar and restaurant. Now those 2 both have a la carte food offerings, and we've intentionally been quite efficient here with our kitchen space. So we've consolidated the kitchen that's serving the a la carte food to the sports bar with that serving the concessions on that same side, and then it's also the same for the restaurant too. So 2 kitchen spaces in this area serving multi-use. We also have a central island bar in the atrium, and that's 33 metres in length when you take that around the perimeter. The Chairs Club, with its exclusive view behind the bowler's arm here, is a 150-person banquet space, but also will serve as a lounge and cocktail facility. Whilst it's going to be optimum for sports, we see it having a non-event day use as well. The finishes in this space are elevated in nature, so we have timber floorboards along the perimeter with carpet tiles through the centre, perforated plasterboard ceiling, and timber wall panelling on the wall. There's a feature bar that anchors the space in the middle there with some reclaimed brickwork, which I'll touch on a little bit more in a moment, and then solid surface bench tops, and this is all serviced by an a la carte kitchen behind. The function room, so the actual usable space is 1150 square metres, so certainly a great size for accommodating the various modes in which it can operate. It's divisible into the 3 rooms with 110 linear metres of operable wall, and so it can accommodate the 1,500 person sit-down lunch, 1,700 in lecture, over 2,000 in cocktail, and then once it's all divided up, it has its modes as an a la carte restaurant and lounge as well. We have 5 bars in the space, 3 of them are full service with tap beer, and there's also 2 kitchens. The one on the south side is an a la carte kitchen, and then the other to the north is the finishing kitchen. The finishes in this space are an Axminster carpet, which is custom designed, taking its inspiration from the view out to Kanani. We're also featuring some Tasmanian timber veneer on the wall panels, and that's from floor to ceiling, which is 5.5 metres high in this space here. So a real opportunity to showcase the Tasmanian here. The bar fronts are all blackened steel with reclaimed timber bench top. The cues here are taken from the industrial nature of the site's past. Then the ceiling finishes are both perforated plasterboard in the lower height ceiling, and then an acoustic panel that's fixed to the underside of the roof in the double height space. Out in the seating bowl of level 2, we have the 350 person open corporate reserves. The in-seat delivery for the food, it comes out of the function room kitchens that are located on level 2. We also have 2 bars at the north and south terraces there that provide, dedicated to the OCRs here. We also have 12 37 square metre rooms as corporate suites. They each have a kitchenette at 6 linear metres long, and this is where we're hoping to really showcase the Tasmanian timbers by each suite. They're in groups of 6, each suite featuring a different species, so with a total of 6 species. So the idea is that each suite tells a different Tasmanian timber story. The other finishes in this space are carpet tile and then an open cell ceiling. So, as Stu mentioned, one of our design pillars is grounded in place, and it's very important that this stadium doesn't feel like it has come from anywhere else, that it is truly Tasmanian. And through that, one of the key features is reusing or reclaiming materials that are of the site, but there's also opportunities to repurpose materials that have had another story elsewhere in Tasmania, giving them a new chapter for this next stage of its life. The first one is the dolerite. We've spoken about that in its ground condition that will be extracted from the site. So using the crushed rock as a gabion for the bar front, for the atrium bar in the premium stand. We also have the opportunity to reclaim the bricks in the substation that are on the site at the moment and repurpose those for 2 of the bars, that 30-metre long bar that I mentioned over gate 1, and then the bar in the Chairs Club. Then the red shed, there's the opportunity to use both the timber and the corrugated iron there. So we're hoping to use the timber to frame the openings of the belly-up concessions and then also as bar tops in some of the bars. The corrugated iron then has the opportunity to be showcased in some of the concession wall linings as well. And then finally, the Tasmanian timber story is integral to the interior fit-out. And it's an opportunity to tell the story of the history, range and beauty of the local material to both Tasmanians and those visiting the state. We're using raw, reclaimed and salvaged timber in both floor, wall, panelling and joinery applications. And as I mentioned, there's 6 species of Tasmanian timbers used throughout the project, and we really see this as an opportunity to feature local expertise and craftsmanship within the fit-out. I'll hand over to Jared now.
Morning all, my name's Jared and I'm the Director of Sporting. We are responsible for the design of the fields of play, being the main oval and the practice areas. As has been described, it's quite a unique design for the stadium, being a fully enclosed roof there, so to some extent it's easy. My drainage is almost negligible, but I do have to cater for the fact that it's a large indoor hothouse. So from a design and construction perspective, it's quite simple. There is obviously another layer to that from the maintenance that will be the curating of that, but from a field of play perspective, it is a flat surface. As I said, being roofed, we can get away with going with a flat surface. The fluoro green you see around the perimeter is a synthetic grass, either on a flexible or a rigid base, depending on where the access points are for the vehicles. As Stu mentioned at the start, we have the allowance for 5 drop-in wickets, which will be procured in the infield there, so that they'll allow that flexibility and changeover between the 2 different sports. Obviously, the grass still needs to grow, so it will be fully irrigated, and I'll provide some more detail in regards to that. Drainage will be limited. And because it is an enclosed environment and because of where we are down in Tasmania, it will be a cool season grass, and it will be supplemented with the use of hybrid turf within that profile. And this is just a bit of a snapshot of what that profile looks like. So pretty conventional when it comes to stadium and elite fields of play. The top 250mm will be over sand that's locally sourced. As I alluded to, the top layer will be a hybrid system, so about 9 to 10% of synthetic fibres will be incorporated within the turf that will be likely grown off-site as a ready-to-play product, because as Jochen showed, the infield will be used as a temporary propping, so it'll be difficult for us to grow the grass while that activity is happening around there, so that will need to be likely sourced off-site. So below that sand layer, we will have a drainage gravel layer, and between those 2 layers, between the sand and the gravel, it allows to create a perching to occur, so any water that does percolate through from the irrigation should sit at that interface between the sand and the gravel. There will be limited drainage as a result of that. If there was a leak or some emergency, we still need the field to be able to take some water away. From an irrigation perspective, we're implementing something that's been used at a lot of stadiums across the country, where every valve, every irrigation sprinkler in the centre goes out to a singular valve in the irrigation control room. So that image to the left is taken from Allianz Stadium. So we'll be implementing something very similar. So each valve you can isolate individually, and all that pipe work, which as you can see is a lot of it, will be going out to each of those there. So from curating perspective, it allows them to operate whatever irrigation sprinkler they need on whatever programming. And as Stu showed, if there's different sort of setups on the infield where part of the field can't be irrigated, we can isolate those areas off and control that. So a lot of pipe work there from an irrigation perspective. On the flip side, there's negligible drainage infrastructure. As I mentioned, we don't have a real need for drainage being a fully enclosed stadium, but we still need to provide some level of drainage in case that there's a leak in the irrigation system or some other leakage throughout. So as you can see, the detail to your left there shows the typical cross-section, and we're using what's called mega flow flat drains throughout the field, and then we'll drain out to two locations in the north and south, just to provide that point of release if we needed it. The other element from a field of play perspective at the moment is the practice deck, which is sitting out next to the goods sheds out in the north. So it'll be an elite surface, so natural turf wickets. We will have operable netting between those, so we can isolate the lanes for the netting. So that is often a proprietary system that allows different wickets to be curated and used throughout. So the turf wickets themselves, natural turf run up, and some synthetic grasses in some of the areas where there'll be high traffic. The profile for the run up will be the same as the main stadium, so what will be used out there will be used internally, and as I said, the wicket block itself will be curated with local clays. And just a snapshot of what's in the ground. Subsoils for the run-ups, obviously it is exposed, so we will need to have some level of drainage through there, so the run-up will be able to drain vertically into that subsurface network, and then the wicket deck itself has only perimeter drainage, so when it rains, the expectation is that the covers are on, water then sheets to the side and is collected in those blue pipes as shown there. Similarly, the irrigation network will be all individually controlled. We may pull that back to having a bit of banking control, but fully automated, providing a network and system for the curators to curate what is a pretty important part of this field of play experience. I'll now hand over to Isaac, to ICT. Thank you.
Thanks, Jared. So I'm Isaac Anderson from PMY, and we've got the ICT, AV and security packages for the stadium. So just quickly from a spatial perspective, looking at the key locations, so on level 0, our incoming services as well as our main comms rooms, both primary and redundant, as well as our main DAS room are all located on that level for ease of access and maintenance and for major equipment, as well as some sporadic floor FCRs that are around level 0. Level 1, pretty uniform again in the round in the circumference for the FCRs. The mezzanine, really just a couple in the west stand. Level 2 again, as we go up, we're looking to converge everything on the west stand where the function is. So level 2 is the same. Level 3, again, we've got the main comms room sort of to the north and south of the west stand, but we do also have the video production suite that's going to be in the west stand to the north side, and there'll be a dedicated rack room that sits in behind there for easy access. Lastly, there is a gantry that's sort of off level 4 that will do a lot of heavy lifting in terms of where infrastructure goes, so both ICT, AV, and allow some always-on accessibility to those locations, as well as being the home to some of our remote radio units for the DAS solution. And I'll come a bit more to that now. So in terms of where the services are located, especially for the in-bowl experience, the gantry, which is one there, is a hung gantry, and it'll be a location for heavy lifting of some of the equipment, including where the access will be from the LED video boards. The video boards will actually be a hung structure, but provide always-on access, and the connection between the gantry and that hung structure will be via catwalk, so we can always get to the LED for in-game maintenance if and when required. The gantry also will have widened sections where we do have things like remote radio units, some comms locations, and be situated next to some of the distribution boards for power for some of those systems as well. And we will leverage the gantry for things like antennas, access points and speakers in various configurations. And then going up from there, number 2 and number 3, so there is an outer and an inner services ring, mostly going to be leveraged from a lighting and control perspective, but they will also be the location for antennas, and DAS antennas, and some of our PA sound boxes. So from an ICT perspective, we're looking at a 2-layer collapsed core fully converged network to support all of the stadium operation, experiential functions. I mean, the scope of what it supports is quite extensive, so there's around 4,000 endpoints that we need to cater for on the active network to support all that layer. From a wireless LAN perspective, or Wi-Fi, we're going for a coverage model, so rather than a high density model. So the connectivity is going to be majorly focused on the fan being through the DAS solution, so mobile connectivity as a low friction way of entry for connectivity. The Wi-Fi still plays a really important operational role for the stadium, for the operations team, and will continue to support things like function rooms. So there is elements of access for patrons, but more in the VIP or the function area. So not as high dense as what we might have seen previously, but that's a trend that we're currently seeing in market, and will be a better user experience at the end of the day. Roughly about 160 access points serving the entirety of the stadium, including some of the main ingress and egress areas around the gates. And then looking at DAS, so there'll be a 4G and 5G enabled DAS solution. It's currently looking like a 14 sector hybrid DAS. It does support sort of both the modes of play, being sort of football and cricket, where it's seated patrons in that 23,000 seats, or up to the 31,000 in concert mode for field of play for patrons. Again, the gantry is heavily leveraged for the sectors, and then there'll be 2 or 3 sectors that will serve internal areas that will be located within the FCRs throughout the lower levels. To be delivered alongside the MCF standards 2025 that's been released. There also is a Tetra radio solution that will be utilised for communications to also be ACMA compliant. From a package perspective, that'll look like the base infrastructure to support endpoint devices, so the base stations, antennas, repeaters, etc., with handheld radios and things to be procured within the FF&E budget. From an AV perspective, I guess the big ticket items around LED. So we have 2 main video boards that are 32:9 ratioed at about 200 square metres. They'll be in the north and the south, just a little bit offset from behind the goals, as we can see in the picture here. Again, that's a hung structure. Access is via the gantry for always on. From a ribbon perspective, we'll have full circumference LED that's on pitch side level, and we'll also have full circumference on level 1 as well. Some interesting detail to be further worked through in later stages is obviously some stage pockets that do disappear, so getting a good engineered solution to make sure the delivery setup, dismantlement, re-establishment of those perimeter boards are done safely and they're done without damaging materials, etc., is going to be something that's going to be a little bit more unique, and we'll look to engineer a solution and work with relevant sort of vendors and contractors on how we can effectively do that alongside the seating structure. Every gate is going to have LED ribbon above the welcome area for ingress, egress messaging, being able to be flexible and being able to do theming, etc. for the different events and hires that roll through. And then finally some external totems, which are 2 dual side, so to the north west and to the southeast, to act as sort of wayfinding and assist people through the outer precinct and coming back into the stadium. Some of the things we're providing, I guess, supporting infrastructure, power, data, and structures for the LED sight screen, so in cricket mode, LED sort of TBD and with the operator, as well as any overlay that would be required for rectangular or non-core sports. There is powered data available in player access vomitories and also near the bench areas, so the ease of overlay has sort of been thought about for things that might not be able to be supported in its own business case. From a sound perspective, the in-bowl sound system is using a 2 or 3 box horn-loaded speaker. There's approximately 68 around the in-bowl. We are using a mix of the outer ring and the gantry, as probably haven't seen to date, but the annulus is not exactly uniform. It plays a role in terms of the shadow and comfort. So where we have got gantries that might actually block a primary design of the 3-box cluster, we'll drop down and go to a 2-box and then have one off the gantry just to make sure we get the right throw and we get the right sound performance. From a performance perspective, we're targeting a steeper of 0.55 over 95% and then 0.5 to 100% of the seating bowl. There'll be a key integration with the EWIS, albeit that'll be separate, but it will be the performance solution for the in-bowl solution. And then secondly, there'll be a sort of, as per AFL guidelines, a dedicated horn, which will be the primary and the PA playing a backup role for the sirens. In terms of the video production space that's on level 3, it's going to be a 13 operator location, plenty of space within the AV racks that sit in behind to make bump in and bump out really easy for the teams, especially when we look at overlay for things that might not be the core sports of AFL or cricket. From a permanent infrastructure, making sure we've got all the routing, switching, KVM, video walls, audio mixers, control stations embedded. Some things that might need to be overlaid dependent on the sport or dependent on the operator would be around replaying clip, wireless intercom, some of the redundancy and any in-house production. Again, probably going to be highly worked with the operator on what that looks like and their eventual contractors in that space. From a digital signage and IPTV solution, looking at a converged system there's roughly around 300 displays around the venue, servicing everything from F&B, from the concourse, in the suites. They perform a function for the coaches, for the back of house, that all sit on a singular network and being able to cater for all the incoming services or feeds that we'll get from satellite, from broadcast, even local content. And then finally, the electronic security package, so the access control, video surveillance, and all coming through a sort of converged integrated security management platform. There's approximately about 250 security surveillance cameras that will be around on site across all different sort of models and captures, as well as 290 I'll switch that around, 250 readers and then 290 video surveillance cameras. That will be supported by 2 main security locations. There's a main one in the south, which is a 4-person operator location that will be the main ingress and egress point and close to staff areas. And then there'll be a remote location in the north access road to help with the assistance of vehicles coming in and out of those spaces. There also is intrusion detection, duress alarms and intercoms that are scattered around those operational spaces too. So I might hand it over to Heather.
Hi everyone, I'm Heather from Prism Facades. I'll run through the cladding and glazing today. So we've got a couple of main types of cladding and then 3 different main types of glazing across the stadium. That one, there we go. So in a little bit more detail, so FTO1 and BAL01 cladding is the main feature cladding, the woven band, the bronze band around the perimeter of the stadium, which is a perforated aluminium. We have the FTO3 cladding, which is more accessible to public underneath, which is just a flat aluminium cassette. And then we've got the glazing. So we have FTO1 and FTO3 window wall glazing, which is inset to those cladding types. And then we have the main entrances, which is doors at ground and then large span fixed glazing overhead. And then, not in this shot here, but the bowl facing glazing. So the main facade across the project is this FTO1 and BAL01 cladding, and there's a couple of samples outside in the lobby. It is just 3 mil thick flat aluminium sheet that has been perforated, folded and then anodised, and then it's just fixed on site. So the profiles are intended to be 300 and 600 mils wide to fit in a general range of anodising baths. The FTO1 cladding is for conditioned spaces. So it is backed onto an FC rain screen, an air seal, and then thermal insulation on a stud frame. So relatively straightforward construction. And then the BAL01 is just backed by FC sheet to protect the cladding from the stadium users. And overall, it's quite a large square meterage at over 7,000 square metres. And then the profiles, there's actually only 4 profiles across the project, but they're in different patterns to appear random, but it is repeated across the facade. And then we have the FTO3 aluminium cladding. There is still quite a lot of this cladding, but it is at the lower level. So it is just a flat 3 mil thick aluminium cassette, which is perforated in front of louvers in some locations. And this is over a FC air seal sheet with insulation just more from a thermal comfort perspective. And then moving on to the glazing. So inset into those 2 cladding types is FTO1B and FTO3 window walls. So they're relatively standard off-the-shelf proprietary window wall framing systems, nominally 150 mils deep for structural purposes. With the FTO1 being against the conditioned spaces, they do require thermally broken aluminium frames, whereas the FTO3, a standard aluminium frame, is fine because that's just open to the concourse in behind. But both do require high performance double glazing, and this is for Section J and code requirements, but also for thermal comfort. With the main entrances, there are 2 different types of main entrances. The typical entrances, so gate 1, gate 3 and gate 4, I believe, which is a standard framed hinged doors for the entrances with fixed glazing overhead supported on steel mullions, which are then clad with timber. And then we have the premium entrance at gate 2, which is a frameless pivot door for the entrances with some steel structure. And the glazing overhead is supported by timber mullions. And this timber is intended to match the glue lam in the roof framing system. And then finally, we've got the bowl-facing glazing. So most importantly, this needs to be very, very transparent and provide a good view to the field of play. There are a couple of different types of facade for the bowl-facing glazing. We do have some standard hinged and sliding door systems, but most of the glazing is frameless glass, which is supported top and bottom in a very standard channel system. Some of this glass does require the 17 degrees inward slope to address reflectivity issues for the media spaces. And then some of this needs to be operable for cameras and the like. But all of this glazing is intended to be constructed out of relatively straightforward sections such as glazing channels, angles, and off-the-shelf elements. And that kind of goes for the rest of the facade. It has been designed so that the majority of the items can be sourced domestically. And that is it for me. Sustainability.
Thanks, Heather. All right, so we touched on some of the design integrated sustainability requirements earlier, but just to cover off on the Green Star requirements, for those that may not be familiar in the room with Green Star, it's a third-party assessed sustainability rating, and it's a holistic assessment of sustainability across embodied carbon associated with materials, energy, water, and those indoor environment qualities. The purple outline is the boundary of where the Green Star Buildings rating applies, which is just to the stadium itself. And then across the site there is the Green Star Communities rating. In terms of the level for Green Star that we're targeting, it's 5-star for those ratings, which represents Australian excellence. And then, briefly touching on those overarching requirements, we've got the impacts of the upfront carbon emissions associated with the materials at the top there. As you can see, concrete and steel are the most significant contributors and will be a key component of achieving that. And then, as Heather touched on as well, the thermal envelope requirements are a key component as well for that efficiency of the indoor environment. And we've got those overarching percentage reduction requirements up there on the left-hand side. And to touch on as well, there are some management plans that are central to the achievement of the Green Star ratings, particularly the Sustainability Management Plan and the Environmental Management Plan, and responsible procurement, and as Sam mentioned at the start, social procurement requirements associated with Green Star as well. I'll skip over this one, and Stadiums Tasmania requirements.
Just before we hand over to Dave, the Chief Operating Officer for Stadiums Tas, just conscious we're throwing a fair bit of information at everyone here this morning, so thought we might just break for a quick tea and coffee break. For those joining us online, we might reconvene at 11:20. Just a reminder, if anyone has any questions, we do have the team down the front here, or to use that URL, and we'll work through any of those. Thanks. Okay, before we hand over to Dave to chat about the stadium in operational phase, we have got a couple of questions. We're just going to run through a few of those. So we'll work through these, and then happy to do some more questions at the end if anything else pops up, or you're still thinking through anything. So we have a couple related to timber. So one is around the roof and the glue lam. So as we've talked about, the roof structure will be a 20 by 20 steel frame as the primary, with supporting timber secondaries using glue lam. And we just had a question around when that's likely to commence. So the roof construction will be one of the early pieces of work to start. So that will be in towards likely the back end of 2027. We'd be expecting that timber to be starting to be installed in sections of the roof. There's also another one around timber, around eucalyptus nidans or plantation oak, around the use of it in the stadium. So that is what we're planning to use for the glue lam. It'll be a real feature in the roof and be accessible through all events and uses of the stadium. The question was about, could we use it for interior use as well? So Amy talked about some of our fit outs and the opportunity to showcase some of Tasmania's specialised timbers. That, I guess, is an example of some of the things we'll look at, and we can certainly include plantation timber or eucalyptus nidans in there as well. There's a couple of questions around that local engagement and the use of local products and manufactured products, and how that will be captured in terms of communicating the importance of that to the contractors through this process. So Sam mentioned the expression of interest process that's just closed and we're currently assessing. 30% of that is the local benefits test, and we've broken that up in the EOI to provide guidance on how we'll be assessing that. So we're looking not only for opportunities for Tasmanians to participate, but also to use Tasmanian businesses and to use those materials. So at this stage of the assessment of the EOI, we're not assessing details around the delivery in terms of how that program will be implemented. We're assessing the capability of the respondents and also how they will approach it. So that 30% will be heavily informed by opportunities to use local people, local materials, and 30% is pretty significant in our weighting. It's the highest of any of the weightings that are in there. So we have communicated that, and through the tender process, through tender briefings, we have emphasised the importance of that and made sure there's clear guidance so that we get good solid responses, because at 30%, it could be the difference about who we proceed with. A couple other questions on scope. So there was a question around car park and a centralised energy plant. So the delivery of a car park isn't required for the stadium, but it is important having car parking in the precinct for the development of the broader precinct, and it will be included as an option in the request for tender stage in that detail costing stage, and that will inform how we work through the next steps of the delivery of that. Centralised and precinct services will be done through a separate procurement. And one other question on scope, just around what will be retained by government. Happy to clarify if I answer this, we haven't quite understood the question. But I did note that the stadium is one of a number of developments that will be part of the precinct, and the stadium is stage one. The rest of the precinct's delivery we will take to market separately. The stadium project footprint includes the stadium and the surrounding landscaping. So that includes the plazas, the external concourse and the access to those. The other elements of the site we will deliver separately. So I think that brings us up to date with all the questions so far. I'm happy to work through any more at the end of the session. And I might welcome David Large to the stage. David is the Chief Operating Officer from Stadiums Tasmania and can talk to us a little bit about the operating stage.
Thank you, Anne. Hello, everyone. As Anne said, my name's David Large, Chief Operating Officer of Stadiums Tasmania, and thought this would be a good opportunity to introduce and chat to perhaps the interface between the build moving into the operations of the venue, and we can also talk about some of the facilities management and FF&E procurement that might interest a few in the room as well. For those who don't know much about Stadiums Tasmania in general, we've been established to centralise the ownership and management of many of the major sporting infrastructure assets in the state. If you're familiar with Stadiums Queensland or Venues New South Wales in the way they've been set up, then you sort of do have a bit of a line into Stadiums Tasmania, very similar sort of way of operating, and we'll be planning to sort of aggregate the operations and streamline a number of those relationships with the market across our venues, of which Mac Point will be the crown, the jewel in the crown, I should say. So we're reasonably new. The Act was 2022. I've been with the business for nearly 2 years now, and sort of been pretty close going on the journey with Anne and the Mac Point team through this design process. There's a few, as I sort of mentioned, in terms of streamlining operations, but there's a few other sort of strings to our bow, if you will. We're going to be pretty central to enhancing the event attraction for the state, and some of you in the room may have attended the Foo Fighters concert up in Launceston, perhaps. It's sort of just a little sort of example of what we've been pushing for recently, and a really sort of nice runway that we'll create for ourselves as we lead into Mac Point, which is going to be a huge attraction for lots of different travelling artists and different sports and entertainment across the country. Really puts Tasmania on the map, which we're excited about. Streamlining operations I've already touched on. Optimising asset management is probably an interesting one for the room today. We will be planning to optimise and sort of draw on some of the economies of scale of having singular operators to assist us with a number of different tasks in maintaining the venue. And I'll talk about a little bit more about that later on. And then policy alignment. We want essentially our patrons and our fans to walk into a Stadiums Tasmania venue and know that it's being run by the one entity. It's got the same feel. It's got the same customer service mantra. It's got the same entry and exit processes, risk assessments, etc. So we think that's a really important aspect, and it's been part of the key, some of the key additions that we've tried to make to the design process. These are the 5 venues that we've been slated to own and operate across the state. 2 venues in the north of the state, the Silverdome and UTAS Stadium, and then Ninja Stadium, MyState Bank Arena, and of course Macquarie Point in Hobart. Mac Point Stadium, obviously this is probably not news to anyone in the room, but just covering this off quickly. We will be planning to host all major sporting codes in the venues. That's not just footy and cricket. I know we've talked a lot about the oval-based sports so far, but we will be planning to host rectangular sports in this venue too, so it changes the configuration and the way people view and interact with the sport. Obviously different. There's no quarters in NRL or in soccer, so different ways of people moving in and around the stadium, which is important to consider. Live entertainment and concerts are going to be a huge driver for Mac Point. It's going to be a really unique venue for those travelling tours and those artists. Obviously, in the design, there is there's a stage pocket. There's loading zones. The back of house areas become extremely important in terms of boneyards and access to and from the pitch. And we'll be looking to have 40,000 people in the stadium for the concerts, and I know that's a big number, and it comes with all sorts of different issues in terms of road closures, moving people safely in and out, getting people fed and watered, having temporary infrastructure and overlays, but that is essentially what we've sort of devised as the tipping point in terms of what type of artist you can attract to a venue. If you can't get up above 35 to 40,000, you are playing in a lower level of sort of attracting those artists, so it's a really important threshold number for us and for the touring market around the country to almost steal those shows from the mainland and say we want them in Hobart, and it's worth your while to come down to Hobart, because they don't do it out of the goodness of their heart, I can assure you. We are pushing, and we have been pushing really significantly with the project team, and we think we've got some really great results in the food and beverage overlay, and you would have seen in Amy's presentation some of the design aspects that have gone into the venue and planning how patrons are fed and watered throughout their experience in the venue. It's going to be a really nice spread of different experiences available, whether it's a corporate facility, whether it's just a GA, whether it's the goods shed, which is going to be a really great asset. And we are expecting the stadium to be pretty full for nearly, I would say, all the Devils home matches, and we're really looking forward to them kicking off. And obviously their memberships went on sale this week. They'll be in the AFL men's competition in 2028, so we'll all get a bit of an eye into that popularity, but we're expecting a full stadium for most of those events, and then obviously for 40,000 for a big concert. What is important to mention, and this sort of relates to the way that the building will age and how we will maintain and service the building, it won't just be the live sport. We'll be planning in our event calendar to host around 34 live sport and entertainment events across the year, including, we're hoping very much that we can work with cricket and attract a test match to Tasmania again. It's been a long time. We think this is a great opportunity to have a test match that's protected from weather and potentially earlier in the summer season, which might mean opening up the potential for a 6th test match in Australia per summer. So we're really excited about pursuing that discussion with cricket. But what is worth mentioning is the minor and non-event day bookings and things like we're sitting right here today, conferences, meetings, events, birthday parties, celebrations, you name it. We will be sweating, especially the Western Stand function area, really hard. We'll be pushing as many functions, and our non-event day business will be generating a significant portion of our revenue through the year, which is pretty standard now across venues around the country in terms of how they're used throughout the week. It's a really important way to make sure the precinct is activated as well, having foot traffic around, people arriving and leaving, etc., on a Monday to Friday. So we're really excited about pushing that area of the business. We'll have two major hirers, two major tenants who will have agreements, the Hurricanes being the cricket and obviously the Tassie Devils, 2 test matches, one-day internationals, T20s, you name it, will be sort of open for business all year round. We'll also be attempting to attract sort of those one-off national sporting codes like the Socceroos or the Matildas, for example, back down to Hobart, which we're excited about. And the way the stadium's configured, it doesn't have to just be a major 40,000 person concert. There is an arena mode concert inside the design, which can cordon off some of the area and allow for a more intimate sort of 10 to 12, 15,000 person concert. So it's a different type of hiring arrangement. In terms of facilities management, a couple of just quick slides on some of the things that we're sort of keen for you all to consider in the room as you're working through which trade packages might be appropriate to bid for. It's probably worth just considering the ongoing operability of some of those aspects and how they're going to be maintained and into the future. So there's a whole lot of contracts that we will let once we take over the operation and ownership of the venue, and some are listed up here. We sort of have seen a significant amount of detail from Jochen and the team on the mechanical systems, hydraulic, electrical, plumbing and water, obviously fire safety, building fabric maintenance, lifts and escalators, vertical circulation, and all of the compliance and statutory inspections. So everything that sort of goes into that sort of hard FM role are areas to consider. And some of these might be in the sense that if you are procuring a scissor lifts or cherry pickers or whatever it might be to actually produce to actually assist in the building process, that also might be kit that could be helpful for your business to come and bid for a package after the fact as well. So just worth considering as you go through that process in the coming months. To sort of complete the picture, the soft FM contracts as well, cleaning and janitorial services, security and reception, catering and food services, waste. Waste will be a really big one, waste management. Venues produce a significant amount of waste. As much as we like to be as sustainable as we possibly can, the waste burden is quite significant. So that's a big one. Landscaping and grounds maintenance, pest control, all pretty sort of standard aspects, but if you or your business has has an arm that deals with some of these things, it's worth sort of keeping your mind on that and when they come out to market. That's me done. I'm happy to sort of take any questions on Slido through the day, but otherwise I'll hand over, I think, to the ICN.
Right. Of course, I had to be the only one that came up on the far side of the stage. Hoping I get a little gold star for that. So much information that has been shared today. It's actually quite incredible. And I'm well aware that I'm standing right here in front of you between the exit doors and all the information you've had so far. So I'm going to make this short, sharp, and I hope relevant. One of the questions that I'm hoping is going to come up is, this sounds fantastic. How do I get to be a bite of the cherry? So I represent the Industry Capability Network over here on the banner. And I just wanted to let you know, for those of you who are not familiar with us already, we're a national federated network and we have offices in every state and territory in Australia. But we exist for one big reason and one reason only, and that's to connect local businesses with real project opportunities, such as the one you're seeing here today. Now, in true Tasmanian style, we do things a little bit different down here in Tassie from the rest of the country. We're actually embedded directly within state growth. Huge benefit for you, because it means that everything that we do for you in supporting you in coming on board with projects like this is 100% free. In every other state and territory, they have to pay for that privilege. We're here to help you for free. Fully subsidised. So we have a very, very tiny team here in Tasmania, 2 people here in the south, someone based in the north and the northwest, but we are supported by the brilliant crew from advanced manufacturing and defence industry. So we do get right across a small team, very, very big impact. For example, last year, for every dollar that was invested in the ICN, we returned here in Tasmania 262% in contracts won by every Tassie business. I think that's pretty good for a team that you can possibly fit around a cafe table. We also grew Tasmanian business capability data by 54%, and we currently hold here in Tasmania the highest quality data in the national ICN network. That means that we're on top of our businesses, we know who you are, we know what your capabilities are, and we're here to talk about you. So how do we support major projects such as the one we've been hearing about today? Well, we sit right in that pre-procurement space. So we're there very, very early when projects are shaping their industry participation plans, and we've heard several times today about that 30%. I'm hoping with the capabilities that we can demonstrate here in Tasmania, we may be able to exceed that. So we help proponents like Stadiums Tasmania understand Tasmanian capability. We help them identify local industry engagement pathways. We break down those projects that you've been seeing today up here into actual work projects, things that are actually going to relate to your businesses directly. And then we run the public expression of interest portals on Gateway by ICN. This is where the national suppliers will put their projects. Once a project then moves into delivery, we don't disappear. We then pivot into capability reporting, and we connect the proponents with specialist suppliers, consultants, maintenance capabilities, and anywhere gaps exist, trust me, I will be on the phone ringing you saying, we need to get you onto our free database. So the challenge for Tasmania, and it is a challenge, isn't it? We understand this because there's been a lot of unsaid conversations about mainland businesses picking up. I'm seeing some head nods. You know where I'm going with this. We see this all the time. So the true Tasmanian challenge we actually see as an opportunity. Most Tasmanian businesses are on the smaller side of an SME. Not all of them, we certainly have some large ones, but the majority are on the smaller end of an SME. However, we're nimble, we're clever, and we're innovative. But we're also juggling 1,000 things at once. I've been a small business owner, trust me, I know what this is like. And very often with these larger projects, what we're looking at is a 5 to 7 year procurement lead. And that is not the case today with the Macquarie Point Development Corporation, which is really exciting. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the chap's name, who actually said this has been fantastic because we pulled it all together in less than 6 months. Yeah, it's just extraordinary what we can actually achieve. So in turn, ICN is ramping up our support with the government purchasing because we know there are at least 7,000 to 10,000 procurements every year. But I can only do that with your help. And you can help me by registering your business on our database. Now, some of you are going to sort of say, look, I've been registered, been doing this for years, I've never had anything come through. And that's because those projects do have a 7 to 10 year lead time. I'm thinking of Tarraleah, the Northwest Transmission Development, there's a couple, Marinus Link, and of course, you know, they're all coming to a head, which might have its own issues. But by having the most complete database of Tasmanian capability, we're actually in a unique position to ensure that local suppliers are being seen and included and not overlooked. And as you can probably guess, that's what I'm really passionate about. So why register with us? Well, short answer, it's free, it's fast, and it does open doors for you. Slightly longer answer, you get tailored notifications about opportunities that match your individual capability. You get access to national and international EOI portals. You have visibility to the project owners and the government buyers, and you have a direct relationship with real human beings. And as I said before, that's my team spread across the state. You have to think of your business profile as an elevator pitch. That's how we explain it to people. It tells the project owners who you are, what you do, and why they should choose you, why you're great at what you do. And that saves you an awful lot of time if you ever spent time on LinkedIn at 10 o'clock at night trying to increase your profile. And the fact of the matter is Tasmania are actually doing extraordinary things, just in case you're not aware. I mean, extraordinary things. We have maritime simulators outside of Penguin that are being sold internationally. We have satellite-driven disaster risk modelling from a shared office just down the road here. We do advanced manufacturing that rivals anything I've seen on the mainland. The issue for Tasmanian businesses, it isn't capability, it's visibility. I'm going to say that again. It's not capability. We are more than capable. It's visibility. How do we get in front of the project owners? So how to connect with us? There's a little QR code down there on the banner, but I've also left some small brochures on the front and a couple of business cards. You can choose to either email us, go straight to the QR code, and that will take you to the login page. If you have any concerns at all, email us, phone us. We're very, very easy to find, and we will be more than happy to get you up and running on that database. We're proactive. As I said before, if I see any gaps from some of the opportunities that I've seen here today, I will pick up the phone. I will find you. I will find you. We'll actually bring you on board as much as we can. So I'm Polly. I'm the Southern Industry Specialist and look after Tasmania as a whole for the ICN, and I really, really hope that we can connect you to some of these major project opportunities. So on that note, I said I'd be quick. I wanted to thank you so much for the opportunity to share a little about the Industry Capability Network. Please reach out to us and let's really make a change here in Tasmania. Thank you.
Thanks, Polly. So importantly, not only is the ICN a really important tool to have all the time, we do have a dedicated page through the ICN specifically for the stadium. So to make sure that as we're working through that contracting process and the tender assessment over the rest of this year working with the lead contractor, it's really valuable to make sure we have as much local content detail in there so we can make sure they have direct access. We have had a number of businesses contacting us directly, and we will make sure that that's passed on and shared with the ICN. So please check it out. There was a URL that's now disappeared on the screen. We'll make sure we share it as a follow-up to this event as well. Page went live this morning, for anyone who didn't hear that. Polly's all over it. So we have a few more questions. And Dave, I've got a question I'm going to handball to you without notice, because somewhere online or in the room we have a Taylor Swift fan. And the question is, when can we expect to see some exciting events and the sort of calibre of people we can attract across our venues, noting Stadiums Tasmania looks after not only the Macquarie Point Stadium once delivered, but is responsible for facilities across the state, as we've seen at York Park. That's my segue to you, Dave.
Thanks, Anne. Always good to hear from the Swifties in the audience. Look, we'll be pushing really hard to have sort of a runway of content leading into the opening of Mac Point. So we think that UTAS Stadium, Ninja Stadium, My State Bank Arena, that you name it, can host more and more shows in the lead up. To answer your question directly, whether 40,000 can actually get Taylor Swift, I'm not sure, but you never know. We'll certainly be trying our very best with all of the promoters, and we actively work with all the global promoters on what opportunities are coming up next. And just for you, out of interest, the lead time for some of these tour shows can be 3 or 4 years out, the planning starts. So rest assured, we certainly are starting to look already as to what we can host at Mac Point for a sort of an opening extravaganza, if you will, to sort of kick off the kick off the venue. So we're excited about it, and we'll keep the shows rolling in the meantime.
Don't go anywhere, Dave. Got another one for you. Doesn't involve Taylor Swift though, but we just, you did talk a bit about some of the activation of the stadium, and it's been really critical throughout all the design phase, working with your team around what do we need outside of those core playing field and base facilities for some of those bigger events. But there's just a question around how will we keep the site, which I'll talk to in a moment, but the stadium activated outside of those major events, because they're significant, but they're actually only a small number of the spectrum of events that we'll have available.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah, a big driver in terms of the sort of daily activation in the precinct and at the venue will be the non-event day business. So you can expect there to be an event booked in at the stadium nearly every single day, whether it's an event like this with sort of 100 people, whether there's 1,000 people sitting in the function room for a conference. The goods shed can be used and activated. That might morph into a gastropub, for example, on a Friday when there's no game on. There's all sorts of opportunities because of the venue's proximity to the CBD, which is a huge draw card, and one of the main benefits, I think, of sort of where it's placed. There's a lot of opportunity as well in the Evans Street frontage area. We're hoping to have a 7-day-a-week restaurant offering that faces the street in that zone as well, and that sort of just generates more and more foot traffic. And then, as Anne's mentioned before, the sort of staging of the precinct development will play a big role in that too. And whether that's retail stores, whether that's office, whether that's commercial, you name it, it just means more foot traffic around the venue from a day-to-day basis.
Thanks, Dave. Unless any more live ones come up, you're free to escape. So just to add to that, so the stadium will be the first major development on site as we move from interim activation into permanent activation. There is the other elements on site too. So we're anticipating, particularly in the eastern commercial zone, that it will sit just to the east, so to the right if you're walking towards the site from here. Other commercial developments in that space, and we've had a lot of interest, particularly in developing a hotel that will be complementary to the stadium and the activations there, office facilities and a few other things. So they're the sorts of things that bring people to the site every day, as well as those public-facing activations that will be part of the stadium. In our design work too on the precinct, we do want an activated ground floor, which is some sort of planner speak to say what we won't have is solid walls that you can't see into. There will be cafes and interaction points so that you can walk through the precinct and feel part of that space. We've got a couple of questions around the EOI process. And I just note anything we receive ever in a procurement process is confidential and we treat it confidentially. So in terms of details around that, it's not something we'll be sharing information on, but we will be, as we move into the tender phase, we will announce at that point the parties that are going into the tender. So we will do that as a direct issue and we'll share that information with everyone at that time. There's a question around logistics and whether we'll be releasing any logistic packages separately. The short answer to that is no. So that will be managed through the contracted package. We won't be taking over individual parts of that work. But as with all elements of the supply chain and workforce and resourcing, we will be encouraging the opportunities for Tasmanian and local businesses to be part of that. A couple of questions around that local engagement and how we'll be looking to enforce and implement that. So as I noted, our actual assessment, a significant part of that assessment is driven by that local participation and advice from those that have responded to the EOI to tell us how they plan to do that and how they'll support that engagement. It will then inform the contract that's issued and it will be a contract requirement. We will require regular reporting. So we'll be reporting on the number of Tasmanian employees, the materials that have been sourced from Tasmania, and that will be all publicly reported and required through the contract. So it will be a constant thing that we're monitoring so we can reinforce those expectations. There's a question around what does success look like? So in 5 years, what do we want to see on site? So at that stage, we'll have our stadium open, but it will be part of a precinct. As I said, there's a number of other elements that we'll be developing. So there's the commercial elements that will take a little while to come online, but at the front facing will be public open space that will be a critical part of that experience you get when you first come into our city and you see our multi-purpose stadium. So we will be looking to activate those spaces initially so that they can be part of stadium activations and events that are on. They'll be open. We'll have, similar to the interim activations we've had on site, to make sure we get community use. And at that point, I think we'd be wanting to have a really clear opportunity to say to the community around what's happening for the rest of the site. So the next stages that follow will be the housing development is stage 2 at Regatta Point, and stage 3 will be the development of that commercial zone on the eastern side. Once those spaces are all developed and in the interim, what we really want is to be drawing people in as part of the city. Our site connects the CBD to the Queen's Domain and to Regatta Points, to that green heart of the city. And that's a little bit of a clumsy connection now, so we want to fill that gap, give people a reason to come to our site, spend time there and experience the full city and those connections. Question around some of the work packages. So we've mentioned stage 1 and stage 2 in the stage plan and the bulk earthworks and good shed pack down, and just a question around novation. So the good shed contract will be novated to the principal contractor. Any other packages of works will remain separate. A nice simple question, will today's presentation will be available online? Yes, it will. We'll make sure we send a link around to everyone who registered. To access it, you have to answer 3 questions to see you're listening. Not really. There's a lot of data in there. We don't expect you to remember it all, and we'll definitely make sure that's available. And there will be people who have missed out on this that will want information, and they'll be able to access it too. As I said at the start, this is live streamed and we are recording, so we'll also make the full session available to anyone who's interested. And I think that is all of our questions. So we've been hugely efficient today and we're running way ahead of schedule, so we'll stick around in case anyone has any further questions. But otherwise, just a reminder to make sure you check in with the ICN, help us make sure we can update our contractors to make sure they know what's available. We are also working with industry peaks so that we can fill some of that gap of an understanding about what is the capability of our local industries across the spectrum of work packages, and help paint that context so they can use the ICN as a direct way to contact individual businesses, but also have an understanding of the spectrum of services that are available and the capability that exists. So thanks again for everyone for participating today. As you can see, we're at a really important and exciting stage of the project, and we just want to share as much information as we can to support as much local participation as possible. If you have any further questions coming out of it today, please reach out. The Slido will stay live for a little while and we'll keep monitoring those questions, or you can always contact us at contact@macpoint.com. Thanks very much for coming.